Hi everyone, this is Angela Wotecki with a Know How Nordonia session all about Genius Hour. And we have a guest presenter today, Angela Cottrell. She is a teacher at Ledgeview Elementary here in Nordonia. And this year, the Ledgeview fourth grade students created Genius Hour projects. And this was a really exciting project. It was a long-term project for the students, and Angela will go into detail and talk a little bit about how they got started and how the project went. So we're really excited to have her join us this evening and talk about that project at Ledgeview. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept of Genius Hour, it is a concept where students can direct their own learning through the lens of their own interests and passions. So they really do take topics that interest them and that drive them and that they're passionate about, and they build upon them. So it really is the teacher giving up control of the classroom and really letting the students kind of take charge of their learning. And the idea really does help make learning a little bit more meaningful for the students and really interesting. And seeing some of the students' projects at Ledgeview was really kind of eye-opening how excited they were about their projects. One project in particular that I remember when they had their little display event was the one, it was two girls, and they started a business. And they were making little purses, and they were sewing them together, and they were going to sell them, and they were actually passing out flyers with information about how to order the purses. But they said that you can't order the purses until summer starts because they still have school going on, which I thought was kind of funny. So it was just really fun to see that not only were they taking, they were excited, but they were making kind of long-term goals and long-term vision of their passions, which I think is a really exciting thing to witness. So I will go ahead and let Angela take over. She has a Google slide presentation that she's going to show, and I'm going to kind of control that slideshow, and I'm going to go ahead and post it on our Know How Nordonia site, on the Tech Weebly site. So along with the video, you can access those slides and use those for the future if you want to plan your own Genius Hour projects. So Angela, I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation, and if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Well, Angela kind of just went into the background of it, but Genius Hour is just time in the classroom where students are able to develop their own passion, whatever they're interested in. And it's based on, the whole idea was based on Google because they allowed their employees like 20% of their work time to do any project that they want. And so some of the ideas that came out of that were like Gmail and a lot of their extra things. And so a lot of teachers have taken this idea and have put it into the classroom. So that's kind of like the brief background. So putting it into the classroom is probably one of the hardest and maybe scariest things because it is almost completely in the students' hands. So kind of how I started off this year with it is just kind of explain to students what Genius Hour was. And there are several links on the slide of little YouTube videos that I showed to the class. There are so many different videos. You can just search on YouTube for Genius Hour. Like I said, I just shared two of them, but if there's any more there's a ton of information out there that you could use to help with your kind of introducing it to your students and also giving you a background on it. There's also books that you could use. I put the three on that I used. Angela, I don't know if you're on I can't really see the slides. The books to read to help inspire the students.
Yeah, I'm on that slide.
Okay. Um, the three I use, there's The Magnificent Thing by Ashley Spires. There's Going Places, and then the OK book. I had found just searching online, um, I came across a site, I don't even remember what the site was, but it had a lot of different books that you could use to kind of introduce students into like thinking on their own and be willing to make mistakes, try out new things, and so it's just like a way to kind of connect them and get them thinking about their own ideas. And then the next slide is it's kind of small, but I came up with I did 3 weeks of, well, 3 lessons of background information or planning out for my students what I was going to do. And so you can kind of look at it, but it's just kind of starting off with the kids like what Genius Hour is, showing videos, and then getting to brainstorm ideas. When we first started, I sent out a survey that the students took home with their to work with their parents, and thinking of ideas of what they'd be interested in, like their personal interests, something they would like to do, a project they might want to do to maybe help the community, or just to get them starting to think about. And it was also a way to get the parents involved in coming up with, like, helping their student think of what they like. And it was kind of interesting to see some of the ideas. But once the students kind of have ideas of what they would like to look at, the hardest part is creating. I call it an ungoogleable question. Students need to develop the question that cannot be easily answered. So Genius Hour is it's kind of like a research project, but taking it beyond that. So the ungoogleable question is, you've got to be able to create a question that if you were to type it into Google, you wouldn't be able to find an answer. And I tell my students, you've got to be able to have multiple resources to help you figure out what it is that you're trying to learn. If you go to the next slide, Angela, I kind of have examples of questions that my kids created last time, or they're working on this. We're doing a second round of Genius Hour now. One of the questions was like, what was life like for a pirate in the late 1700s? And so the student had to look at many different resources, because she was looking at what they did, what they dressed, what was it like for them on the boat, why did some of them become pirates. She also looked into the stereotypes of the pirates and kind of talked about like the myths that have been passed through the years that weren't really true during this lifetime. We had several students interested in creating a video game. So like with that one, they had to not just understand like what the video game was, but they looked at different sites that they could use as a student that would help them develop a game that they could share. This time around, I have students that were interested in building a water slide. So they wanted to look to see what the physics are behind the water slide and how they could create one of their own. And then we also had several students that were interested in stop motion videos. So they're having to research like exactly what is stop motion, what are the materials they need, what do they need to do to actually create their own video. If you have questions, just stop me so I can answer anything. But
I have a quick question for you, Angela. What do you do if a student really does not know what direction they want to go? I mean, how do you kind of work them through finding a project to do?
The first time, it was kind of difficult, so we would kind of brainstorm as a class. Like, they would share ideas, and sometimes students would be like, oh, that's something that's kind of interested, so they would maybe take that idea but make it their own. Like for the first time around, we had several groups doing creating video games. It was a popular thing for them. So it's kind of more like, I guess, working together as a class, coming up with ideas. Also, maybe I don't know, like if you kind of have an idea of, I mean, you get an idea of what the students are interested, you can maybe help guide them with an idea of what they would like to do.
Okay, and then do you let them work with like partners or by themselves, or can they pick a partner, or how does that work?
I let the students choose. Some wanted to do it completely independently. Some wanted to do groups. I say it's better to do partners, but I did have a group of 3. We also found that some projects we could integrate with each other. Like this last time, I had a group of girls that wanted to create a play about bullying, but then I also had another student, she wanted to learn how to make her own movie. And so those two groups got together, and the girl created a movie of the other group of girls performing their play. So it was kind of interesting to see how the different projects could work together. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Next slide is class time. Like, how much time should you spend on this? All we do is about an hour once a week, and we usually do it Friday afternoons. We end up setting up maybe about an hour and a half, just because when we come back from lunch and recess, we only have an hour and a half left of the day. So pretty much just our one time a week is all we spend on it. It's important, though, that you have a clear end time of when you want the project done. The first time around, we started, I think it was October when we started, and then they ended up presenting at the end of February. But like for a while there, we didn't have a clear date when we wanted the students to be finished, and it just would kind of drag on. Whereas this time around, we started our new project beginning of March, and then we'll be doing another expo in May, and so they have a very clear timeline, so it helps them. I've noticed they're a little bit more on task just because they know how much time they have to spend on their project. So I found that to be very helpful, just saying like you only have 8 class times to work on this, and it's really helped them focus more this time around. So the next slide I have is like what actually goes on during that class time. Students are pretty much working on their own, and it's kind of amazing. They're leading their own learning, and they're very much on task. I mean, you have maybe some small like off-task behavior, but for the majority, they're doing what they need to do. And so as my role as a teacher is then I'm walking around to each of the groups and conferencing with them. So I just kind of see what they're doing, what is it that they need, are there certain materials they need to have in order to do their project. Always have them reflect like what struggles are they having and what is their end game, what do they hope to accomplish. I can't get to every group every week. It's just very difficult in the time amount. So I just make sure that I can at least get to half one week and half the other. But it's, like I said, they're very on task for most of the time when they're doing their project. So,
Angela, do you have like documentation that you have them fill in to kind of check in with them and make sure they're on the right track with everything?
Yeah, I'm actually going to kind of get into that next time. Like, I write down notes as I conference with them so that I can remember and see where they are. And then what I have the students do, and this is the next slide, is I require them to keep notes. Like, they need to write down the sources that they get their information from, What did they learn from that source? I also then at the end of each class time have them reflect on what they did. And like for the first part of the year, I had them blogging, and they would kind of reflect on what did they learn, what are some difficulties they had, and then I always have them set a goal for what they hope to accomplish the next time. Like I said, I had them blogging the first time, but found it to be a little bit difficult just because we're sharing Chromebooks with 5 different classes. Next year, my goal is with being one-to-one that might be it'll be more doable for each kid to blog. Right now, they're just doing paper pencil, and they rate also their productivity level from a 1 through 5. And I will walk around as they're reflecting to see what they did, and they're actually pretty honest about how well they're working, how well they use their time during that class period. So, but that reflection piece is very important, I find, for the students. So just to get them focused on what they need to do to kind of meet their end game of what they want. So.
And we have a former student that works for Google, actually, and so he does, Genius Hour as part of his job. And he said that he does have to do journaling and reflections and all of that with his project, in order to kind of get paid for Genius Hour. And he said his supervisor does look at those on a pretty regular basis, and they actually share those through Google Docs, I guess. And he said that they share them, and the supervisor, if it's a really, really good idea, can actually share that with some of the really important people at Google, and they'll see, his reflection and all of that. So that's kind of a cool reflection that you're doing that with your students, and that's really how Google really does it.
Yeah. And I didn't do this the first time around, but the second time I was going to have the kids, they would have a folder where they could put their notes in and their reflections, and that would be part of their final presentation. So that way people can see, they can look to see how they progress through their ideas. And it actually, I think it would hold the kids even more accountable if they knew other people might be looking at what they are doing besides just me, their teacher. The next slide is like, what do you hope to get, like the end game of the whole Genius Hour? And I think it's really important that they can present their projects. I just found, like, with this first time around, the kids were really excited about not just presenting to the class. They present to their class all the time. But we invited parents in to come see their projects. And the other classes in the building came and saw, and they were just, you can tell how proud they were of their work and what they had done. Like, we even had comment sheets that people, when they came and saw their presentation, could write down what they liked or what they learned. And it was kind of funny that some of the kids were counting up to see how many people actually came to see their presentation, and they were really excited about that part of it. But I just think it added another element into that project. And I know a lot of the parents really enjoyed not just seeing their students' work, like their own child's work, but they traveled to the different classrooms to see what the other students had done. And it was a lot of positive feedback, and it was a great way to get the parents into the building to see what the kids were doing.
Right, and Angela, you invited me to go, which I was so thankful for, because I got to see all of this in action. And what really kind of got me was how many students were using technology as part of their presentation. And there's actually a group, and I don't know exactly what their topic was. I believe it was something with animals, but they actually had parents playing Kahoot. And they had a smartboard, and they had the smartboard running Kahoot, and then they had the parents had Chromebooks that they were playing Kahoot with. And I just thought that was a really kind of cool concept to, because that gets the parents to experience technology, it gets the students, creating technology presentations, and then they get comfortable with presenting, it live and speaking and all of those type of presentation skills in addition to the technology integration. And I just thought that was like really cool to see. And their Google Slides were just really, really well done. Did you give them feedback on their presentation side of it, or did you just kind of make sure that they had the right amount of time to present and all that type of thing? How did you kind of make sure that the projects were going to be presentable?
Well, we came up with a form of items that should be in their presentation, their final presentation, and so they worked on typing out their information, because then we had them glue it to note cards for them to use. But then we had them, at least I know in my class, I had them present to the class before they would be going out into their parents and that stuff, and I had their classmates give them something they really thought they did well, but what was something they could do to improve before they got in front of their parents. And I was actually really impressed with the comments that the kids had come up with. They were really helpful, like, you need to speak up, you need to slow down. This part was a little confusing, and so like we did that several days before our final expo, so that way the kids could go back and tweak or practice it a little bit more before they were doing it in front of everybody, and that was really helpful for them. That was also the time where I graded their projects, where I was on that and just in the classroom there. The next slide, I have pictures from our expo that I took. So you could see some of the things they did, like the one up in the corner, she wanted to learn how to knit, but she used her arms. So she had to go through all the different sources of like all the different videos, learning how the steps to knit a scarf using just her arms. And then we had like some of them dressed up in costumes. There's one that he got really into the Greek mythology, and so he looked more into that. And then like to the bottom right there, she was the one that wanted to learn more about pirates, so she came dressed up as a pirate for part of her presentation. And then to the bottom left there, these boys created a video game. They also, for part of their presentation, they did a screencast of all the different steps that they had done so they could play it. So it was actually, there were several kids that did screencasts as part of their presentation to kind of teach people how they created their video game. So, next slide I have is what your role as a teacher, like, I mean, you're conferencing with them, but you've got to be, I think the toughest part is kind of letting go of some of the control. The students are the ones that are taking the ownership, their learning, their motivation. You are just kind of there to, if they are struggling with a little part, just to offer a little bit of guidance, but you try to encourage them to problem solve it out on their own. You're not giving them step-by-step directions on what you're doing. You're just kind of observing almost. And that's kind of probably the hardest thing, is just to kind of step back and let the kids go. And so that just takes a little bit for you to get used to it. And it's, once you are comfortable with it, though, it's like, it's wonderful. You're letting them do all the work, and you're just kind of walking around, letting them bounce ideas off of you. But you've got to be able to realize that you are not going to know everything they want to learn. So it's actually kind of beneficial, because like the students that want to learn how to create video games, that's not something I know. So if they were struggling with something, I couldn't really offer them much help. They had to be able to figure it out on their own. And it's kind of nice to see them address their own problems and deal with it kind of thing. So
yeah, and I mean, even me being at the high school, a lot of the time I have conversations with students a lot about different questions or topics that they want to research more about, and I think it really helps for students to see that that teachers don't know everything, and that we're not experts in everything, and that we go through steps in our head and on paper, and to to figure out and how to find an answer to something. So I think that's a really great concept too, to kind of show students by modeling that, you know what, hey, you know, I don't really know, let's find out, or let's look online, or let's use, you know, a resource and see if we can find the answer, or let's ask, you know, someone that we know that is an expert at this for their help. So I think that's a great lesson too in itself.
Yeah. Next slide, you'll have to come back. If you come back on there, we had created a video, some of the students sharing about Genius Hour, like what their project was, what they liked about it. It's not going to work. The sound, it's too, you can't hear the sound. But if you go back later, you can listen to some of the what the kids' thoughts were about Genius Hour. And then, I mean, I don't have much more, but the last slide I have are different resources that I've used. So if you go back later and click on this, you'll take it. There is just so much information out there, though. There's a Genius Hour live binder. That was like one of the first things I found. It's very overwhelming, though. There's lots of tabs, so just do a little bit at a time if you like it. Teacher Pay Teachers has a lot of different resources for Genius Hour packets. The reflection sheet that I found to use this time, I got from there. Just like I said, if you just Google Genius Hour, you're going to find lots of videos, lots of websites, because it's becoming more and more popular in the classrooms. So, okay.
All right. Go ahead and stop sharing. Well, thank you, Angela, for showing us for putting together that presentation, for one, and then for also, you know, sharing with us kind of your trial and error and what worked and what didn't work. And again, you did this with fourth grade students. So I think, you know, that goes to show that fourth grade students can handle that project, and they can do a really good job with it too. And it sounds like, you know, they really were looking forward to that 1 hour a week Genius Hour.
Yeah, I would have actually, because we do it on Friday afternoons. I know, like, because that first part of the year we have lots of Fridays off for professional develop. I would have students get very upset when we didn't have school on Friday, which was very different than normal, because they would be missing out on their Genius Hour time. So.
Right. Yeah, and I know a couple students that I had talked to at the expo were telling me, you know, oh, you know, we would spend our recess, you know, if Miss Cottrell would let us, we would spend recess doing Genius Hour instead of going to recess. So that goes to show you, you know, that they really do enjoy it, and that they'll give that time up to do that, which is good. Now I had a couple questions, and then we'll go ahead and open it up to any of our live attendees to see if they have any questions for you. One of my questions is time, because I'm always hearing from teachers that you know, there's just not enough time structured in the day to dedicate to this time to experiment and brainstorm and plan a Genius Hour. So what would be your tip for a teacher who really wants to start this but just doesn't think there's enough time in the day?
Like I said, it's 1 hour a week, and the Genius Hour actually addresses a lot of the standards, a lot in the, especially like language arts with the presenting, the research. It's just, it's worth it. You've got the problem solving. It's just, like I said, that's why we kind of did it at the end of the week, that Friday afternoon. It was kind of a nice way just to kind of, you've gotten through the rush of everything else that you had to cover, and so that Friday afternoon was a time where you can just focus on that Genius Hour, and the kids were excited about it, and it's just a way for you just kind of walk around and get to know the students more. But like I said, if you stop and look at all the standards that Genius Hour could possibly cover, I mean, you're covering what you need to do in a way that's actually the kids are excited about. So.
Yeah, I think that's good. And, you know, I do think it is important, too, to remember that, you know, if if a student wants to go above and beyond and work on it on their own time or work on it, during recess or something like that, to allow them to do that, allow them to be inspired and motivated and driven to keep continuing on the project. But I think that 1 hour that you're dedicating once a week is really good because you're there. So even though you're the facilitator, you're there, you're putting them on the right path, you're kind of structuring it so that those students who feel like they're stuck on a concept or stuck on something can actually get help from you or kind of get a direction. And I think that's really good. And, I think a lot of students probably in your class and other classes at Ledgeview were spending more time, doing Genius Hour outside of the school day. So I think that's something to remember as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one more question about materials, because when I was at the expo, I saw, a lot of different materials. Don't mind my little Lola. Lola wants to say hi to everybody. Hello, cat Lola. Anyways, so materials. So the one question that I had is definitely a lot of students had like knitting materials and drawing materials and the connects for the students that made the roller coaster. How do you get funding for that, or is it kind of at the parents' expense that they purchase those materials for the projects, or how does that work?
The first time around, a lot of the students brought in their own materials, like the one, I had a group that they made the roller coaster. He actually had his birthday early. It was like in the fall. He actually asked his grandma for the Connects roller coaster set. That's what he wanted to be for his Genius Hour project. Like the knitting and stuff. Like I said, a lot of the kids brought in stuff. We had the kids use trifle boards as a way to help enhance their presentation. I mean, a lot of the kids did like slides and that stuff, but it was kind of nice for them to kind of put it all in one place, especially with so many people walking around. I did a PTA grant to get like the trifold boards and that stuff. It just depends. You might be amazed on how many kids really don't need that many materials. It just depends. Like this time around, a lot of the kids are just researching things, expanding. I said there are some kids I have to go out and get materials maybe for myself, or I used petty cash for little things. I also wrote a GAR grant. Hopefully I can get for next year. So it's just maybe looking at some grants. Like I said, the PTA grant was a really good one that you could use for materials. So a lot of the materials the kids will need aren't going to cost that much. So like yarn is not going to cost much, or like the kids, a lot of the like building the water slide is just PVC piping. So it's just looking to see what it is and then going from there. But a lot of the kids just bring their stuff in because they want it immediately, and so they just ask their parents to go get it. But
right, and I think too, another thing I was thinking of is if this is a building-wide activity or something like that, collaborating with your specials teachers, working with your music teachers and working with your art teachers and having them help with developing the projects and gathering materials and that type of thing. I think, this really could open up to a building-wide project. I know fourth grade is the oldest grade at Ledgeview, but I think for the older grades, if there was a building-wide Genius Hour project, you could definitely work together with the other teachers, such as the art teachers, the music teachers, work with the library staff, with the researching aspect and those type of things. And I think it could really be, a really worthwhile project that could really help the students kind of, be engaged learners and really be motivated. So that's a good thing to mention too. I'll go ahead and open up the floor. If there's any attendees that have questions, you can, if you want to unmute your mics and ask them. Angela is here, and if she doesn't know, I can always try to see if I have any ideas.
I have a question. I don't know if you guys can hear me. This is Rob from Lee Eaton.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, hello. Hey, thanks for sharing with us this evening. What kind of support do you need or would like from your school administrator to get this, not necessarily to get it going and to keep it going also?
It's just really like with my principal, with Jolene, she's very supportive. She's into like the maker movement and all that kind of stuff. It's basically just realizing and supporting that the room is probably going to be a little loud and chaotic an hour a week, but those kids are learning. And even just, it's kind of nice if, like, as an administrator, if you could just walk around. The kids love sharing what they're learning to somebody else and new, and it just, it creates another level of excitement for them. Um, Also, if you can think of other ways of maybe getting materials to help with some of the cost. But it's mostly just kind of being there, visible, and encouraging. So,
And how do you grow the program? I know, so you started it, and then to get other people fired up about it and join it, because right now it's not required like for all fourth grade classes to do or anything like that. How do you keep the excitement and get other people involved in it and kind of fired up to take it on themselves too?
I think like the expo, I think was a great way for the teachers and students to see. And this time around, the third grade has joined us, and like several of the classrooms, like my classroom, it has teamed up with a third grade classroom, and so my students are acting as mentors to those third grade students. They're not necessarily doing projects together, but they're just there to help them problem solve different situations. But I think those, like that expo, it really got people to see what exactly the kids were capable of. And they just realized, I think it helped them understand exactly what Genius Hour was, more than just hearing people talk about it. They could actually see what the end result was. Um, so yeah, I
Were
think
you
that
the
expo just added to it.
were you the
Hmm?
only fourth grade teacher in your building doing it at the time?
No, all five fourth grade teachers were doing it this year. So
Okay. I see, and I gotta say hello to all my other Elite Eating friends out there. I see that are on here, so that's awesome to see. Got a nice representation from fifth and sixth grade teachers.
Yes, yes. I think this has been our biggest live Know-How Nordonia ever, which is exciting. Um, and do you have a date for that expo, Angela, that is coming up in May?
um, we are going to do 2 days this time because we have some, like the third grades joining us. It's May, I think it's the 24th and 25th. It's that Tuesday and Wednesday in the afternoon again.
So, Rob, that might be something if you're able to get out of the building and go to Ledgeview and just walk through, even just walk through one of the classrooms or through the cafeteria. It was really exciting to actually be there and to see some of the students presenting and to talk to them, and it was good. So I think that would be a good experience for you too to get an administrator point of view with that.
And was that all day, or is that just? Did you say that was after lunch, or when are the presentations?
Um,
That was
I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be around 1:45, like, or even like around from 2 o'clock. We ended at 2:45 though for dismissal, so parents and stuff were out of. Parents could move be out of the way for the buses to get in. But no, we didn't. We were doing it in the afternoon.
so the last hour and a half of the 24th and 25th in May.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Rob, for your questions. Are there any other questions that we have? Dawn, shaking your head no. Dawn, are you planning on doing something like this next year? Oh, I can't hear her. Shake your head yes or no. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes, I figured since you're on the call, you were somewhat interested in this. I will also say there are a ton of professional development books about Genius Hour. So if you look on Amazon or go to your public library, Yay Library, and look online for possible Genius Hour books for teachers, you will find there's a lot of things out there right now. As Angela had mentioned, the maker movement is huge right now. It's all about students using using during their school time, they're making things, they're creating, they're generating their curiosity, and they're being creative and making things and creating things and presenting things that they create. So it really is a really exciting time in education. We're seeing 3D printers in schools. We're seeing robotics that are happening in schools, and you don't need to be a STEM school to have robotics now. So it's really exciting to see this really take off. And when I heard Ledgeview had this program, I was like really excited because, I think this is something that will really benefit our students, especially since we're one-to-one. So I think that's really important too.
Hey, Angela, I had a question. When you started your program, was there time given to you guys to go ahead and meet and to coordinate, or was there something through the ESC, or did you really just start digging into books and that online information that you shared with us earlier and just take it from that point and move, or was there something that you could be sent to kind of start collaborate and get this going?
We just kind of did it on our own. Haven't seen any professional development that you could attend. There is online, you'll find somebody named AJ Giuliani. If you find anything by him, I think he's kind of pushed the Genius Hour into the classroom, but he has a lot of materials online. I think he's written a book or two about it, but he has webinars. We've watched several of those on how to implement it into the classroom. So if you find anything about him, he's definitely one you want to look out for, and he will give you a lot of helpful information on how to put Genius Hour into the classroom.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Angela, it's Todd. Sorry, my camera's not working, so you can't see me. But I wanted to thank you for presenting tonight, because I know it's not the easiest thing to do, and it's not fun. But we really appreciate it, and I love the fact that there's some folks at Lee Eaton here joining us tonight that are interested in taking this movement and taking it forward. I got a quick question. The GAR grant you mentioned, how much did you apply for?
I had to remember. I wrote 2 grants. I think it was about maybe $8,000, but I requested digital cameras. The kids, we have about 2 digital cameras per the class, and it's for those kids making things. I have them photograph their progress as they go, whether they're knitting or something. It's just kind of a way to see how their project's grown. But it was, those cameras were helpful, for the kids wanting to record themselves for video. But I also asked for there 1 or 2 3D printers to add to it, and some robotic stuff to help increase the interest for next year.
Some big equipment needs then. Okay, that's good. Glad. And have you heard back from them, or are you still waiting?
Still waiting.
Okay, cool. Well, you've got a great support there in Jolene with the GAR grant for sure. So, so let me know how that goes.
Okay.
As far as supplies and stuff like that go that you guys were talking about, I know that I want to be able to support you financially for things like this, and this also goes out to 3rd grade. You can pass along to them, as well as Leeton folks here that are thinking about getting on board. The only problem I think probably with going through my department is the timing of getting those things. You made the mention the kids bring it because they want to do it that day or whatever. Obviously, we're not going to be able to turn around things like that quick, but if you find that you have materials coming from, a single vendor, you mentioned, piping and stuff like that. If we could work out a open PO or something like that from Home Depot that could help out, or something like that, make sure you guys talk to me about those kinds of things, so that I can try to support you in that way. Also, don't forget about the foundation. their fall and spring grants. They're significantly less than what you tried to get through the car grant, but $500 could be
Yeah.
easily spent on supplies for you to have it on hand in the classroom if you wanted. Um, but I want you to know that I'm here to support you. I think it's a great movement. Anything that emphasizes kids taking ownership of their own learning, I am 100% for. So please talk to me when that time comes. And one last thing I wanted to mention: Paid Teachers has a lot of resources. Don't forget, we do have the Google Doc set up so that you can go on there and purchase items on there. The turnaround has gotten a lot quicker with them. Some days it's the actual, if Tina orders it that morning, I receive it that afternoon and push it out through Google Docs to you guys. So just let me know if there's something there I can support you with. Thank you again for presenting. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
I don't think I realized that every fourth grade person there did that. So I'm looking and I see Sue Harris and Deb Justice on right now. So we kind of have a built-in number of students that have been through this, and will be through it twice, and could be student leaders within the classrooms in fifth grade then coming through, which would be pretty nice, and also to start growing their leadership skills through this also.
It's been kind of nice to see, just like from the difference too in their leadership between the first time we've done it and now the second time. It's like they're pros at it, and it's amazing to see the difference just between the two different times and just this year. So if you decide to do it next year, you'll have no problem with Ledgeview kids. They will be wonderful helpers with Genius Hour.
Nice.
That's exciting. All right, well, before we head out for the evening, because it is actually a pretty nice night out there, I don't want to keep you all night long, I wanted to share a website that actually just came across my email over the weekend, and it's called Thrively, THRIVELY.com. And Thrively.com is a Genius Hour website for teachers. And what you can do is it's free. From what I've seen and tried, everything is free. So the teacher creates a free account, and you can actually create accounts for your students within Thrively. It's a closed environment, so it's not public. And your students can take a personality/passion test. And what it does is it then, based on their answers, and I think the test they said takes about 30 minutes. It's online. It's on the site. And the students take the test, and then it analyzes the results, and it gives the students some of their biggest passions. And it gives them some possible Genius Hour projects, as well as some external things they can do, such as field trips or museums they can visit or other information they can research. So it's a relatively new website. I haven't heard of it before, and I received an email from one of the reps this weekend talking about Nordonia creating some accounts for teachers and trying it out. So I think somehow they found out we were doing Genius Hour and wanted to share some information with us. But from everything I've tried, it is completely free for teachers. So I wanted to share that with everyone. If you're interested, you can just create an account and play around with it and see if it's something that's worthwhile for you and your students. But that just goes to show you that these resources are being put out there for teachers to take advantage of that can really help make this project, easy for the teachers, especially the teachers who might not feel 100% comfortable with the process of it. So I wanted to share with you that website, and I will also put that on the Know How Nordonia website. I'll link that for any teachers that are interested in that. So I wanted to share that before we ended. I think if there's nothing else for this evening, I want to again thank you, Angela, for giving of your evening and giving of your time to share with us and teach us. I think it's, we learn best when we learn from each other. That's what I always say. So thank you so much for doing that. And I guess we will take off for this evening. If you have any questions about Genius Hour, you can email Angela or email me, and I can get in touch and try to figure out some answers for you. And thank you again for joining us, and have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting this.
Thank you
very much.